There are moments in life when people you once knew like the back of your hand suddenly feel like strangers. They stop calling. They stop smiling the same way. They avoid your eyes like there is a truth they can't bear to share. There are moments in life when your journey forward doesn't just take you to new places, it silently changes the people around you too. Growth is a strange thing. It is quiet at first, like a seed pushing through the dirt where no one can see it. But once it breaks through the surface, once it begins to show, people notice. Some clap for you, some admire you, but there are those whose smiles hide a sudden discomfort they cannot name. Because the moment you start to grow, you unknowingly hold up a mirror to their lives. Without saying a single word, your progress asks them silent questions they have avoided for years. It makes them look at the dreams they abandoned, the promises they broke to themselves, the versions of life they wanted but never chased. You didn't ask them to compare. You didn't want them to feel small. But sometimes your light makes others realize how long they have been standing in the dark. And not everyone is ready to face that truth. Growth has a way of shifting the energy in the room. People who once laughed with you might now feel like they have to compete with you. Not because you wanted competition, but because your becoming reminds them that they stayed the same. And staying the same feels safe until someone close to you starts climbing. Then safety begins to look like stagnation. That is a hard thing for some to accept. It is easier for them to blame you for changing than to admit they chose comfort over courage. So they start to distance themselves. They stop sharing victories because yours feel louder. They stop celebrating you because every step you take forward whispers to them about the steps they never took. What they don't realize is that your growth is not their enemy. It was never about comparison. It was never about being ahead or behind. But people see the world through the lens of their own insecurities. And when you grow, those insecurities speak louder than your intentions. Suddenly the friend who once rooted for you begins to withdraw. They cancel plans. Their words lose warmth. Sometimes they even turn cold. Not because you hurt them, but because they cannot bear the feeling that life left them behind while moving you forward. It is painful to watch this happen, to wonder why someone's energy shifted the moment you started changing your life. But the truth is, your growth forces people to confront themselves. Some are inspired by it, using your success as proof that they too can rise. Others are intimidated by it, seeing your journey as evidence of what they could have done but didn't. And instead of facing that regret, they change how they act toward you. They hide it under excuses, under sudden silence, under strange new attitudes that feel like betrayal, but are really just fear in disguise. You will notice it most when you start breaking patterns. When you stop living small, stop apologizing for wanting more, stop shrinking to make others comfortable. That is when the shift happens. People who love the version of you that needed saving may not know how to love the version of you that can stand alone. People who felt secure when you were struggling might feel unsettled when you start winning. Growth doesn't just change you. It changes the way people see you. And not everyone will like the reflection. Jealousy is one of those emotions people rarely admit to feeling, yet it hides in the spaces between smiles and congratulations. When life starts blessing you with growth, success, or even small victories, you expect the ones closest to you to cheer the loudest. And some will. They will clap for you with hearts as open as their hands, because your success doesn't threaten them, it inspires them. But then there are the others, the ones whose smiles feel heavy, whose compliments land without warmth, whose eyes shift in ways words cannot cover. That is where jealousy lives, in the silent places where love and comparison collide. Sometimes people don't even realize it at first. They think they are happy for you, and maybe part of them is. But then they watch you reach something they once told themselves they would have by now. A dream job, a relationship, a chance to shine in a way they've been waiting for, but never saw come. And suddenly, your victory feels to them like life choosing sides. Like the universe handed you what they prayed for, and left them holding empty hands. It isn't that you took anything from them, but your win reminds them of every race they quit, every dream they delayed, every opportunity they let slip by while waiting for the right time. The thing about jealousy is that it rarely comes dressed as anger. Often, it shows up as distance, as sarcasm in conversations, as subtle comparisons that leave you confused about when the tone changed. They start pulling away, not because you hurt them, but because your success hurts the version of themselves they thought they would be by now. They look at you and see proof that it was possible all along, and that is a hard truth to swallow when they told themselves for years that timing, luck, or circumstance was the only thing holding them back. What makes this feeling so complicated is that it can come from people who love you. A friend, a sibling, even someone who once pushed you to go after the very things you now have. They wanted you to win until you did. Because sometimes they imagine both of you winning together, or maybe you winning after them, but not before. And when life writes a different story, they don't know how to read it without feeling like they lost something in the process. You'll notice it in the way conversations shift. Before, they asked about your dreams with excitement. Now, when you share good news, there's a pause too long, a smile too thin, a reply too forced. It's not always obvious, but you can feel it, the way people start carrying unspoken weight when your life begins to rise. They may tell you they're proud of you, but their actions change. They stop showing up. They stop rooting for you out loud. They stop celebrating you in ways that used to feel effortless. And the truth is, jealousy often comes from comparison, but comparison comes from fear. Fear that there isn't enough success to go around. Fear that your light makes theirs look dimmer. Fear that life has favorites, and they weren't chosen. They don't see that your journey has nothing to do with theirs, that your success doesn't take from anyone else's plate. But fear doesn't listen to reason. It only whispers lies that turn friends into strangers, supporters into critics, and closeness into quiet resentment. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships, and it often hides behind silence, distance, or sudden changes in behavior. When people feel truly seen by you, when you start noticing the things they try to hide from the world, it can be terrifying for them. Most people build walls around the most vulnerable parts of themselves. They cover their insecurities with laughter, bury their doubts under confidence, and wear masks so carefully crafted that even they start to believe them. But when you come close enough to see through the cracks, to notice the parts they worked so hard to keep hidden, fear takes over. Not fear of you, but fear of being exposed. Fear of having someone witness the versions of themselves they are not proud of. Fear of being known too deeply, because being known means being vulnerable, and vulnerability feels like risk. When people sense that you can see them beyond the surface, beyond the stories they tell, and the roles they play, it can make them retreat. Some people crave connection, but are terrified of it at the same time. They want someone to understand them, yet the moment someone gets too close, they pull away. Because closeness leaves no room for pretending. It demands authenticity. And authenticity reveals wounds, fears, and truths that many would rather keep locked away. So when you show up with open eyes and an open heart, some people don't know how to handle it. Instead of welcoming it, they run from it. This fear often has roots buried deep in the past. Maybe they trusted someone once and were betrayed. Maybe they revealed their heart before, and it was met with judgment, rejection, or ridicule. Those experiences teach people to build walls so high that even kindness feels dangerous. So when you see them clearly, when you notice the sadness in their smile, the hesitation in their words, the pain they thought they hid so well, it threatens the safety of those walls. You aren't doing anything wrong by seeing them, but to them, it feels like standing under a spotlight they never asked for. Sometimes fear also comes from the idea of change itself. When you begin to evolve, when your life starts moving in new directions, it forces people to confront the possibility that the version of you they knew might not stay the same. That scares them. They wonder if you'll outgrow them, if you'll leave them behind, if the bond you share will survive the shifts happening in your life. Instead of asking, instead of talking about it, they distance themselves as a way to protect their hearts from what they fear might be inevitable. You'll notice this fear in subtle ways. The friend who used to tell you everything suddenly keeps their thoughts to themselves. The person who laughed freely with you now measures their words. The closeness that once felt effortless starts to feel guarded, as if there's a door between you that wasn't there before. It isn't anger or jealousy this time. It's the quiet retreat of someone afraid of being seen too deeply or losing something they don't know how to hold on to. Fear convinces people that distance equals safety, that if they step back, they can avoid the pain of being vulnerable, of being left, of being fully known. But in reality, all it creates is silence where connection used to live, walls where bridges once stood, and confusion where there used to be understanding. Life moves in seasons, even if we don't always notice it while standing in the middle of one. People come into our lives at different times, for different reasons, carrying different lessons. Some arrive when we are lost, offering laughter when we have forgotten how to smile. Some walk in when we are broken, helping us carry the pieces until we can stand again. And some appear in moments of joy, when everything feels light and easy, and we think it will stay that way forever. But nothing in life stays the same. Just as winter turns to spring and day gives way to night, relationships shift with the seasons of our lives. The friend who felt like family during your hardest days might slowly drift away when the storms clear, not out of anger, but because their chapter in your story is over. The person who understood your pain might not understand your peace, because they met you in the middle of your struggle, and that is where the connection was born. When the struggle fades, sometimes the bond does too. It doesn't mean the love wasn't real. It just means it belonged to a certain time, a certain version of you, a certain season that is no longer here. As we grow, we change. Our dreams change, our values shift, our priorities rearrange themselves in ways we never expected. The people who fit perfectly into the old version of our lives might not fit as easily into the new one. It can feel like loss, but often it is just life making space for what comes next. Some people are bridges, carrying us from one stage to another, never meant to stay forever, but to help us cross into something new. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, because we want permanence. We want the people we love to stay the same, to stay with us, to stay unchanged no matter how many seasons life takes us through. But nothing about growth allows things to stay as they were. Just as trees shed their leaves in autumn, we shed relationships, habits, and versions of ourselves that no longer belong in the next chapter. It hurts when it happens. It feels like something is breaking, but sometimes it is just transformation in disguise. People changing toward you can simply mean that your paths are no longer aligned. Maybe the road you are on now doesn't run parallel to theirs anymore. Maybe the things you dream of, the goals you chase, the life you are building no longer matches the one they see for themselves. And so the distance grows, not because of anger or betrayal, but because you are walking in different directions. Sometimes you outgrow people. Sometimes they outgrow you. It doesn't have to be anyone's fault. Growth is rarely comfortable, and change rarely asks for permission before it arrives. The conversations get shorter, the visits less frequent, the energy quieter. You try to hold on, but life has a way of pulling apart what no longer fits, no matter how tightly you cling to it. And maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Maybe some people are only meant to teach you how to survive the winter, but aren't meant to walk with you into spring. Maybe some souls are only passing through, not because the love wasn't real, but because the season has ended and a new one has begun, carrying you both toward places neither of you can yet see. Sometimes people carry silent expectations of who you should be, how you should act, and what role you should play in their lives. They build an unspoken version of you in their minds, a version that stays small enough to never outshine them, predictable enough to never surprise them, and familiar enough to never make them question themselves. As long as you stay inside that version, they feel safe. The friendship feels easy. The relationship feels steady. The bond feels unshaken. But the moment you begin to grow beyond the version they created, when you start choosing yourself in ways you never did before, when you begin breaking cycles, setting boundaries, chasing dreams bigger than the life they imagined for you, something inside them shifts. They may never say it out loud, but disappointment begins to creep in, because you are no longer fitting into the role they wrote for you without asking your permission. Maybe they liked you better when you needed them. Maybe they felt more comfortable when you stayed where you were, struggling beside them, making them feel like you were both on the same page. But now you are changing. You are no longer who you used to be, and instead of celebrating that, they feel betrayed by it. It is a strange kind of betrayal because you didn't break any promises. You didn't hurt them intentionally. All you did was become the person you were always meant to be. Yet, to them, it feels like you broke an agreement they never told you about. The agreement to stay small. The agreement to not grow faster than them. The agreement to stay the same so they could keep seeing themselves the same way in your reflection. This is why people sometimes turn cold when you start to heal or succeed. Your transformation disrupts the balance they depended on. Maybe they saw themselves as the strong one, the successful one, the one giving advice while you were still figuring things out. And then you changed. You started thriving, and suddenly they didn't know who they were in the story anymore. Instead of adjusting, instead of growing with you, they pull back, because it feels easier than confronting their own discomfort. It can show up in subtle ways at first. They might stop celebrating your wins. They might make small comments that downplay your progress or bring up your past, as if to remind you where you came from. Sometimes they distance themselves completely, acting like you changed in a bad way, when the truth is you simply stopped staying in places that kept you small. People rarely admit this feeling because it sounds selfish to say, "I liked you better before you grew." But their actions will tell you everything. The missed calls, the excuses, the sudden silence in moments that should have been filled with support. It hurts because you thought they would be proud of you. You thought they would walk with you into every new chapter. Instead, they act like you left them behind, even though you never pushed them away. What they don't realize is that your growth was never about outgrowing them. It was about finally listening to the parts of yourself you ignored for too long. It was about breaking cycles that kept you stuck. It was about healing wounds that kept you small. And if your growth makes them feel betrayed, it only reveals that what they valued wasn't you, but the version of you that stayed quiet, predictable, and easy to accept. Sometimes the way people see you is not shaped by their own experiences with you, but by the voices of others whispering in their ears. A single comment, a careless opinion, or a twisted version of the truth can plant seeds of doubt in someone's mind, and those seeds can grow quickly if the soil of insecurity or misunderstanding is already there. One day everything feels the same between you, and the next, the energy has shifted in a way you can't quite explain. They look at you differently, speak to you differently, treat you like a stranger, even though you haven't changed at all. That is the quiet power of outside voices. They can turn trust into suspicion, warmth into distance, closeness into confusion, without you even knowing what was said or why it mattered so much. It doesn't always come from malicious people. Sometimes it comes from someone sharing their version of events, their opinions, their judgments, without considering the damage their words can do. People love to tell stories, and stories often grow bigger and darker with every retelling. By the time it reaches someone close to you, the story barely resembles the truth. Yet it leaves an impression that is hard to erase. Suddenly, the person you love, the friend you trust, the one who knew your heart, starts seeing you through a lens someone else handed them. There is also the problem of comparison. Maybe someone told them how well you're doing, how much you've grown, how far you've come, and instead of celebrating, it stirred something unsettled inside them. Outside voices can feed insecurities that were already there, making them wonder if you've changed, if success has made you different, if the closeness you shared will survive now that life is moving forward for you. It is rarely about the facts themselves, and more about the feelings those facts awaken when someone else puts them into words. What makes it even harder is that people rarely ask for your side of the story. They don't sit down and say, "This is what I heard. Is it true?" Instead, they let the whispers shape their perception quietly, slowly, until they begin to believe things that were never real. You start noticing the distance before you even know there's a reason for it. The calls get shorter. The laughter feels forced. The trust that once felt unshaken now feels like glass, fragile and one wrong word away from shattering completely. Sometimes the people spreading these stories aren't even doing it intentionally. They might be speaking from their own pain, their own misunderstandings, their own jealousy. But the person hearing it doesn't always see the source clearly. They only hear the words, and words have power. They can make someone question what they once knew for sure. They can rewrite memories, turning moments of kindness into things that now feel suspicious. They can turn the simplest actions into evidence of things you never did, things you never meant, things you never even thought of. You find yourself carrying the weight of rumors you didn't start, defending yourself against assumptions you didn't create, losing people to stories you weren't even part of telling. And it hurts because you realize the bond you shared wasn't as unshakable as you believed. All it took was a few outside voices to make them see you through a stranger's eyes, to make them forget the history you built, the trust you earned, the moments that were real long before the whispers began. In the end, when people change toward you, it's rarely as simple as it seems on the surface. Sometimes it's your growth shining a light on what they haven't faced in themselves. Sometimes it's jealousy, fear, shifting seasons, silent betrayals, outside voices, or the distance that healing can create. Whatever the reason, their change often says more about the battles they're fighting inside than it does about you. Life has a way of removing what no longer aligns and revealing what was real all along. Those who are meant to stay will walk with you through every version of yourself, the broken, the growing, the thriving, and they won't be shaken by the changes life brings. Because the right people don't fear your becoming, they celebrate it.